Their greatest fear is being taken advantage of. They do not like being taken advantage of, and oftentimes that is why they end up in control. They will take control of a situation fast because they know that if they are in control, then nobody can take advantage of them. What's happening, guys? And welcome back to another episode of the Mullins Muster Podcast. So excited to be with you again this month. And as always, we ask that if we're adding value to you, your organization, your personal life, your family, please do us a favor. Leave a rating, review, and let others know how we're adding value and helping to make you better. You can leave our reviews on Google, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Please help us spread the word and help others know how we are affecting you in a positive manner. We thank you in advance for helping us out with that. And as we get those reviews, we'll share a few of them with you in future podcasts. This month we're going to talk about personality assessments. And as a general population, you really fall into one of two categories, and that's either you love them or you hate them. As a leader, we should absolutely love them. And we should love them for two reasons. One, we need to know ourselves. We need to know what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, how we need to surround ourselves with people who help make up for some of our weaknesses. And at the same time, we need to know what the people we work with and people that work for us, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and how to build the proper team and how to get them to communicate with one another. Now, there's all kinds of great assessments out there, from Myers-Briggs to Enneagram to Working Genius. But today we're going to talk about DISC. And DISC is something that's been around since 1928 with William Marston, and it continues to be developed over time. And so we're going to dive in to the DISC method of personalities. There's a great quote by Wayne Dyer, and he says that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change. And that's so true with our lives. When we start to figure out what kind of patterns are out there, what kind of expectations people have and how they want to communicate, man, it makes things so much easier for us. It absolutely does. We get more done, stress levels go down, teamwork and productivity goes up. It is an amazing thing to be a part of and to witness. But we have to know each other's patterns. We have to know how to truly look at those individuals and how they need to be looking at us as well. That's the only way to make a true cohesive team. A lot of times when people start talking about their personalities, they ask, where do they come from? How do we get shaped and molded into the way we are today? And it really comes from three different things. It comes from heredity, your environment, and your role models. And in all honesty, when it comes to your environment and your role models, those have our biggest impacts within our formative years. Early childhood ages of like 4 to 8 years old is where those have their greatest impact. Now, that's not to say you can't change over time and that you can't put effort into making things easier for you or work through some of your challenges in terms of your personality and how you want to communicate and how you interact with others. But there's a large portion of how we are today that is directed back into our childhood years between the ages of 4 and 8. And it is absolutely phenomenal to see how that carries with us through the rest of our lives. And each one of these things, whether it's heredity, environments, or role models, really help shape us into who we are today as adults. If we look at our DISC, D, I, S, and C, you've got dominant, influencing, steady, and compliant. And as you look at these, and as we start to break these down further, if you're a dominant or an influencer kind of person, then you may be a little more outgoing. And so you don't mind having a conversation with strangers. You don't mind striking up conversations with people that are going to help get things done that you want to get done. But if you're more on the S and C side, the steady and the compliant side, you're actually probably a little more reserved and you're not as outgoing. You're kind of in a shell, and a lot of people will think that you're just super introverted, and that's not necessarily the case. The case is that you just really need to get to know someone before you start talking more and more. You want to know that environment a little better. So if you're a steady or a compliant type, you may be a little more reserved. If you are a D or a C type, a dominant or a compliant type, odds are you're more task oriented and that you see a task well before you see an individual, because there's always a job to get done and there's always a better way to do it. And so a lot of times you're looking at the task itself before you see the people. And then if you're more on the I or the S side of things, you are definitely more people oriented. You see people before you see tasks. You're always worried about their well-being before your own, and then you're always putting them before the task itself. None of these things are right nor wrong. They're all just different, and it's how we're fearfully and wonderfully made, in all honesty. And so even if you've never taken a DISC personality assessment before, you can kind of see where you start to fall in. If you're more outgoing, you're probably in the D or the I category. If you're more reserved and a little more introverted, there's a probability that you're in the compliant, the steady side of things. If you're more people-oriented, you're going to be in the I and the S, the influence and the steady state. And if you're task-oriented, you're probably going to fall into the dominant and the compliant side of things. So let's take a little bit deeper dive into the different types of the personalities. And we're going to start with our dominant types. They make up only 3% of the world population. They seek control. They're very decisive, they're direct, and they are fueled, absolutely fueled by results. It is what drives them. It is absolutely what drives them. They focus on their results. They're always moving. There's always something else to do. It's a go, 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 go mentality for our Ds. Oftentimes they're right in a lot of the things that they do because they're good at making quick decisions. A lot of times when I say that they're right, they're right, but they can't explain to you why they're right. They go with their gut a lot of times, and it proves to work out in their favor more often than not. They embrace change, especially if it's going to help them get the results that they want and the results that they're looking for. They absolutely will embrace change. They don't mind it one bit. And they're extremely comfortable in having some direct confrontation. In fact, they'll even start some direct confrontation from time to time. They don't mind picking a fight just for the sake of picking a fight, because that is what they do. They don't mind it one bit. They love loyalty. They love people who are loyal to them. But their greatest fear is being taken advantage of. They do not like being taken advantage of, and oftentimes that is why they end up in control. They will take control of a situation fast because they know that if they are in control, then nobody can take advantage of them. That's why if you ask a D to go to lunch, they're probably going to want to drive, even if they're driving your car. That's just the way it is. They want to be in control no matter what. Our I's, our influencers, man, these are the folks that love the spotlight. They are persuasive, spontaneous, super friendly. They don't mind being up front in front of a crowd. They'll cut a little jig. They'll do some salsa dancing. They don't care. They don't mind being out in front of people at all. Like I said, super spontaneous, love the spotlight, and they make up only 11% of our population. They are super fun, friendly. They are the life of the party, and they are always active. They don't mind being on the go either. These are the types of people that you're going to meet, you're going to have great conversation with, you're going to talk for hours. They're going to get all of your social media information, your emails. They're going to get everything they can about you written down. And then you're never going to hear from them again. And the reason you're never going to hear from them again is because the second that they left you, they went somewhere else and they found a new bestie. They found them a new BFF. They found new friends, and they got all their contact information as well. And then they're never going to call them either, because that's just who they are. They love people that much. But their greatest fear is rejection and the loss of approval. That is their greatest fear, because they want to be accepted by those around them. Our S's, and I love our S's, they are team-oriented people. They absolutely love being part of a great team. They have great follow-through, and I'm not talking about just at the free throw line, right? They absolutely see things through from start to finish. Like the loyal, very, very team-oriented, love the cohesive atmosphere that comes with a team, but they need to feel accepted. If you're an S, I just want to say thank you so much for being an S. 69% of the population, right? God knew what he was doing when he made our S's. Can you imagine if 69% of the population were a bunch of directs, a bunch of dominant people? Man, that would be awful. Everybody just bossing everybody around, telling people what to do all the time. And that's not how things are intended to be. And so our S's make us so much better. Our steady folks make us so much better. So again, if you're an S, thank you for being an S. You make everyone else better because you're always focused on the team. You're focused on them. You're focused on their well-being. And we can't thank you enough. And if you don't have a lot of S's on your team, I'm going to encourage you to go out and to get some on your team. You will be better for it. Your team will be better for it. And you will go further because of it. Because they are always in the right place at the right time, with the right gift, with the right hug, with the right high five, because they're that kind of person. I love our S's. A lot of times, our dominants and our steadies, our D's and our S's, they don't get along very well, but they really could. The potential is there. They just have to know how to communicate. We'll get into some of that later, but they need to know how to communicate with one another, because the S does not like confrontation. They can't stand it. That is one of their greatest fears, is having confrontation. And they will, at the sight of confrontation, whether it's good or bad, they will immediately just check into the shell hotel, man. They'll be like a turtle and just right into the shell, and they ain't coming out until there's peace and harmony and love in the world. And it doesn't matter. They will stay in there for as long as they can, because they don't like confrontation that much. Whereas a D doesn't mind it. And they will often clash. But our dominant folks love loyalty, and our steady folks are extremely loyal. So it can be a match made in heaven for the workplace, as long as you know how to communicate. But our steady folks, our S's, they're good listeners, very compassionate, always putting people first, and they treasure peaceful relationships. Our C's, our compliant ones, man, they are always on time. Extremely analytical. In fact, I'm willing to bet if you're a C and you're listening to this and you heard me say that our dominants are 3% of the population, our influencers are 11%, and our steady folk are 69% of the population, you've already done the math and said, well, that means that there's 17% that are compliant, that fall within the C category. If you did that, then I guarantee, or I'm willing to bet, that you are a C-type personality, and you are a compliant one, because you're extremely analytical. One of the problems with the C's is that they're not very spontaneous, right? They're analytical, they're data-driven, they love numbers. In fact, if they bring you a project of any kind, you can almost take that to the bank that it is good as gold, because they see all the fine details. They really do. In fact, they get so far down the weeds, so far down the details sometimes, they miss what the big picture is truly all about. Our C-wired folks, conscientious, very accurate, like I said, detail oriented, and they treasure perfection. These are the ones, these are your scientists, these are your doctors, some of your medical professionals. They thrive on the details, but their biggest fear is criticism, because they know that what they're doing is right. With the data that they had, the product that they put out on the back end, they know it's right. And so they do not want to be criticized for it, because they put so much time, heart, effort, and energy into what they do that if they're criticized, it just hurts them all the way to the core. All the way to the core. Now, if you're going to communicate with all these individuals, there's some do's and don'ts that you got to remember. And when you're talking with a D, here's some of the things that you can do to make yourself a little bit better in terms of your communication with them. You got to be specific. You have to be very specific with someone that is a D-wired individual, someone who is dominant. Be brief, be direct, okay? Be to the point. If you can do bullet statements, just talking bullet statements all the time, that is the way to do it when talking with a D person. Don't come in asking them how their family is, asking about how the dog is. That's not how they want to communicate. It's task-oriented, results-oriented. Bring them what questions, not how questions, because if you're asking them how questions, odds are that they look at you at that point as incompetent and that, hey, you're just not going to be able to do what I need you to do, so you're no good to me. So bring them what questions, not how questions, because a D is going to find out how. They will find an answer for it, and they expect you to do the same. Don't ramble, stick to the point, and you will go a lot further. Okay? If you bring them a problem, bring them a solution as well. Do not get stuck on the problem. Communicating with our eyes, with our influencers. You cannot ignore their ideas. You cannot ignore their ideas. They want to be heard. They want to know that you are listening to them. Acknowledge that. Have that conversation with them. Listen, and listen to the eyes. Let them speak. That is absolutely something that you need to do. But once you're done with the conversation, send them an email, follow it up in writing. That way, everyone's on the same page as to what exactly was talked about and what the expectations are going forward. A 40-minute conversation with an I may not be the best way to go about things. You may need to break that down into 4 10-minute conversations. And if they're super high I, you may need to break that out into 10 4-minute conversations, okay? But break it down to small increments and bookend it. Don't just go straight to the point like you would with a dominant, with a D-style personality. Bookend the conversation. Come in asking about how their family is. Let them talk. Let them know what they did over the weekend. Let them tell you about all that. You tell them about some of the stuff that you've done. Then move into business. Talk about what you need to talk about. And then end it on the back half with, hey, have a great time at the concert you're going to this weekend. Or, hey, you guys are going to a big birthday bash for your nephew, man. Hey, enjoy that. Whatever the case may be, bookend it to make a personal touch on the front and the back half, and you'll go so much further with the eyes. Our S's, if you're dealing with our steady folks, when you're talking with them, even if you're not feeling very friendly, look friendly. If they sense that you're angry, mad, anything, you're going to come in and they're going to shut you down. They are absolutely going to shut you out because they think that they've done something wrong, and they do not want that appearance. They don't want that. And so always look friendly. Go approach them with a smile. Let them know that it's okay, that it's not the end of the world, whatever you're going to talk about, and ease the tension. Make sure there's no tension there when you're talking with an S. Don't be overly aggressive. Do not be overly aggressive. And minimize any potential for confrontation, because that is not something that they love. Be sure to show interest in them as a person, because when you're in a crowded room with an S, the eyes are bouncing around from table to table, and they need to know every single person in the room. The S does not. The S just wants to get to know the people at their table, and they want to know them extremely well. They don't need to know everybody else in the room. They just want to know who they're sitting with. So when you're talking to an S, make it personal. Make it personal. If you're working on a project together, give them the definition of what the goal is, and make sure each person's role is clearly defined. You will go a lot further with the S's. And this is something that you really need to master as a leader, because S's do make up 69% of the population. All right, now we're getting into our C's, our compliant type. These are the ones that love the details. They love the details. They want a step-by-step process. They don't mind boring, repetitive processes. This is why I said they make up our scientific world, because they're all about standards and measurement. They love being in the medical field because they're about standards and measurement. And how do they go about the process of making things better? And this is where the C's are. So the more information that you can provide them up front, the better off you're going to be later on. Because if not, if you just walk in there, slap something on their desk and say, hey, handle this, they're going to have a gazillion questions. Well, what do you mean handle it? Do you want to handle it the way we used to handle it? Or we just talked a couple days ago about handling this a new way. Do you want me to go ahead and do it that way? How do you want me to handle it? They're going to have a lot of different questions. So don't be that way when you're talking with a compliant type person. Make sure you're specific. Make sure you clearly communicate what the expectations are and the process in which it needs to be handled. That's going to go a long ways. Make sure you offer up all the facts and that they're verified facts, because they will go in and they will validate those facts even if you don't. So don't feed them a bunch of lines. Give them straight, solid truth. Give them nothing but the facts. Be patient with them. They're going to ask a lot of questions. It's just like when a doctor walks into the room, they're asking you a ton of questions because they're trying to fully understand what is wrong with you medically, and they want to make sure they have the right answers. I told you earlier that they are absolutely going to bring you stuff and you can take it to the bank, but they need all the data, they need all the information in order to be able to take it to the bank. And so they're going to ask a lot of questions. Be patient with them. Be patient. All right, guys. So it has been absolutely awesome. That's a quick rundown, quick, dirty version of the DISC personality assessment. There's some do's and don'ts for how to communicate. Hopefully, if you've never taken a DISC assessment, you've got an idea of where you fall within this realm. Hopefully it's made you a little bit better, a little bit wiser. If you have questions, feel free to hit me up at humbleleaderdevelopment@gmail.com. I'd love to have the conversation with you. And so today's Bible verse comes from Romans 12:4-6. And it says that a body is made up of many parts, and each of us has its own use. That's how it is with us. There are many of us, but each are a part of the body of Christ, as well as a part of one another. God has also given each of us different gifts to use. We are all uniquely and wonderfully made within the image and the eyes of God. We all have different personalities, and that's okay. None of them are right, none of them are wrong. But we have to be able to communicate with one another and know what makes one another tick so we can be better within our homes, within our places of work, and within our communities. If we start to understand how everyone needs to hear things, how they want to be communicated with, we will make it a better place. Hey, thanks so much for being with us, guys. It's been an absolute blast yet again. If you have questions, feel free. Shoot me an email at humbleleaderdevelopment@gmail.com. We'd love to have a conversation with you. If you want more details about going further in depth, hit me up with that as well. You guys have an outstanding month, and we'll catch you next time on the Mullins Muster Podcast. Thanks.